Okay, we're live. And get into the picture. Yeah, it's a little high. Okay. Well, I don't know if there's anybody here yet. It says 2. Oh, there's Julie. Hi, Julie.
Actually, I forgot to get my iPad.
Of course you did. So we'll just wait to see if we get a few more people here before we begin. Can you hear us and see us okay, Julie? We're doing it again this week from the iPhone, and hopefully we'll have good luck with that. Jody's here. Hi, Jody. Jody says she's ready to discuss her retirement. She retired a year ago. Pracy's here. Hi, Pracy. Miss Purple Potato says, or Jody says, sound is great. Okay, good. And Julie says yes, I guess, to both things, that they can see us and hear us. Okay, so while we're getting ready for other people on here, let's just go over some basics from what we did this week. Update on my mother. She's waiting for new teeth. Guess the guy came and did her impressions the other day. So that should be happening soon for her, and that's a good thing. And besides that, she's fine. I just got off the phone from her half an hour ago. And yeah, I guess everything's about normal. What are you doing now?
I didn't get my cheap glasses. So
Cripes. So anyways, that's my mother. Big thing that we went to this weekend, we went to Ottawa, which is, for those of you that are not Canadian and may not know, Ottawa is Canada's capital city. It's about 4 hours east of us. And so we went up on Wednesday because we went to the Canadian Quilt Show. And that was quite interesting. Quite a few vendors. Didn't really buy that much because everybody had pretty much the same thing. And prices weren't all that good. There weren't bargains to be had there at all. And in fact,
I did buy a kit though.
Oh yeah, Walter bought a kit. Whenever he gets that done, who knows?
Yeah, true.
But there was a lot of quilts. And I did do a video of pretty much all the quilts. And I've posted it in the Idiot Quilters section of my channel. So if you're interested in taking a look at it, runs about 18 minutes, I think. But some of the work is phenomenal. Some of them people must have spent years on. I can tell you, because it was just like you look at it and go,
It was
oh my
pretty
God.
amazing.
Yeah, it was really amazing. Jody says, are those pina coladas? No, they are, what are they?
They're margaritas again. We've had 3 weeks of margaritas. I'm on a margarita.
Margarita kit, yeah.
Probably wouldn't get pina colada because it usually has coconut.
Oh, and you don't like that.
And I don't like coconut, so.
I do. Pina coladas. Geez, that's now suddenly got my
I might
craving.
make some sometime.
With pineapple juice, yeah, that'd be okay. So nope, they're margaritas. So yeah, as I was saying, the Canadian Quilt Show, some of those quilts were incredible. I was talking to a couple of the ladies that were there helping, and we were talking about them being as works of art. And you know what's really sad, and I think we've talked about this before, art galleries have no appreciation for this kind of stuff whatsoever. They have a very narrow view of what art is. To them, art has to involve paint or sculpture, has to be done by people who basically have degrees in fine art.
But if somebody that has is recognized as an artist, like a painter or whatever, and then they somehow, however they got recognized as an artist, they somehow end up doing a quilt, then suddenly that
yeah, then it
art.
will become art. Yeah, exactly. Now, the art community is a very snotty community. And that's what these ladies were saying too. I said they want to reduce this kind of stuff. They call it craft. And when somebody with a fine arts degree background and people who work in art galleries, they tend to, when they use the word craft, they use it like it's a dirty word. Like they just said, why don't you craft off, kind of a thing. And they're wrong. That's
Yeah,
our
I've been in art galleries where I've seen things that I would consider craft,
hi, Cindy.
right? But like I said, if it's done by a recognized artist,
It suddenly
then
becomes.
it suddenly the craft becomes
And what I
right.
love it is when they try to explain the meaning behind the art. And it's just a whole lot of bull. And I've done it. I've stood up there in front of people and go, oh, well, you can see this here, the symbolic quality of this, which brings out the existentialism in the artist, but it's probably more or less a label on the state of the world at this given time and moment. And we should all stand back and reflect and share this communication with those about us, because by doing so, we're opening up the channels where we can bring about world peace and solve world hunger. Bullshit. Okay, so yeah, Virginia's here. Hi, Virginia. So anyways, it was a great quilt show, but okay, I don't know how many of you have ever been to Ottawa or want to go to Ottawa. Ottawa is a bit of a disappointment as far as I'm concerned, because you've got the Parliament buildings, and they are probably the thing that people want to see the most, because they are old, they are magnificent in their structural design, except right now they're covered in scaffolding, because I guess they're sandblasting them and repairing them and doing whatever they need to do to upkeep things that have been there for, 150 years or more.
Well, the main Parliament buildings aren't covered.
Well, no, but the Senate was,
Yeah,
or whatever.
Senate was
That's
covered.
that. But the problem with Ottawa, and it's the problem with any big city. I mean, Ottawa is not a big city by world standards. It's got less than 1 million people in
Yeah,
it.
600,000, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was a sign, but it includes the suburbs, so 900 and some odd thousand. But Ottawa Central,
Is I think 600,000
yeah.
based on.
So that's not a huge city, especially when it's the capital of the nation. But there's an awful lot of bums hanging out in Ottawa. And I mean, it's kind of sad. You think this is our capital of our country. You want to put your best foot forward because you're going to have tourist industry and everybody coming there. And you have basically these rubby grubs all over the place. I saw one woman, it was kind of sad. She's a homeless woman. I'm homeless and I'm pregnant. And there's some other stuff. Well, she's got a cigarette though hanging out of one hand as she's sitting there on the side of the road.
Did she look pregnant?
It's hard to tell whether she's pregnant or fat, but she said she was pregnant. So I don't know. I have a feeling it wasn't her first time with that situation. But it's really kind of sad to see this kind of thing in our nation's capital. It's sad to see it in any city, anywhere in the world, I think. But, in our country too, especially since we do have a welfare system that's, a fairly extensive one, that we still have people who are in this state. So I don't know. We happen to have a hotel room though at the University of Ottawa, which was very close to the main center of Ottawa, like 6 blocks away, kind of a thing from the Parliament buildings. And no frills, no thrills, but we knew that beforehand because we've stayed in dormitories when it's off season for the school, and they often open them up and you can rent them like hotel rooms. But we didn't know or think about the fact that we were going to have a lot of kids in this hotel, grade 8s, because it's a favorite destination at this time of the year for the graduating class trip from grade 8, and they all go to Ottawa. And so we're there, we get checked into our room, and we're just sitting in there, and the door opens. I went, hello, and it was some of these kids. Well, I guess their room key opened our room, which wasn't really a good idea, I didn't think.
Not great on security.
And the teacher jumped right over on my throat for a moment. He says, well, you must have the wrong room. I says, no, we don't have the wrong room. It's 1102. This is the key that we were given. This is written on our little package. So I said, we'll have to go and check that out. So I went down to the front desk and found out that indeed it was the wrong room, but not by our fault. The clerk at the desk gave us the wrong room number. We were supposed to be in 1112, not 1102. So he profusely apologized and all this stuff, and he
Still
says,
doesn't make sense why our key opened the door.
Yeah, our key initially opened the door. Oh, and he said to me, okay, these are kids, college students that do this. It's probably a summer job for them, or maybe it's part of a course. Maybe they're taking hospitality or something. But this poor guy, when I got down, he says, "Oh," he says, "well, were you aware that you're past your checkout time?" And I said, "We just checked in half an hour ago." "Oh, what's the name?" Gave him the name, and he goes, "Oh," he says, "I'm so sorry." He said, "I gave you the wrong room number. You should be in 1112, not 1102." So he gave us new keys for that. He says, "Are you all unpacked, or to move?" And I says, "No, we're fine. We didn't have that much stuff with us." So I said, "No, we can move. That's okay." And I'm thinking, just as well move to a different room, because we don't need in the middle of the night these kids blasting into our room or something. So we moved down the hall, and that was fine. But it's not luxury accommodation. But the only other thing that was available was $600 a night. So you'll put up for 2 nights with no frills, no thrills. I mean, it had a bathroom. It was clean.
It used to be a comfort inn or something
Yeah.
like this, and they converted it to a dorm, so the rooms weren't huge or anything like that. So,
So it was fine. It was what it was.
and stains on certain parts of the carpet.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to take a black light on that room at all. That would have been scary. So yeah, so that's where we stayed, and we just stayed 2 nights, and
Well, it was good because it was close to the apartment
Yeah.
buildings. We were close to all the things downtown. So
yeah, we were close to everything that's downtown. They have something in Ottawa called the Byward Market, which is big sort of shops, a lot of restaurants. That's where everybody tends to go for to eat, go out in the evening, that kind of thing. So we went to a couple of places there, and it was okay. It was a little mini vacation, sort of. So, anyways, that was basically what we did last week. And if you saw my vlog, not this past Monday, yeah, it was this past Monday, I had announced that I'm no longer on Facebook. I lied. I'm back on. We'll see how long it lasts. I have been hacked twice on Facebook in the last month. And each time what they've done is they've disabled my Facebook. I can't get into it. And the last one that they did just a week ago, or less than a week ago, I saw that my account name had been changed to something Korean or Vietnamese in name. And on my other account, when I could get into it too, I noticed there was these things coming up in my friends list, which were Vietnamese ladies that are not friends of mine. I don't know any Vietnamese ladies, and I have a feeling they were, they may not have necessarily been ladies, that kind of thing. Ladies of the night, whatever you want to call them, mail order brides, whatever. So I don't know what went on, and Facebook is absolutely no help to you whatsoever. Well, today I had pretty much resolved myself to the fact that I'm not going to use Facebook anymore. Bang. But withdrawal is a hard thing, because although I don't constantly check Facebook, there's a lot of my people that I know, that's their only way of communicating with me, that they just are on Facebook, nothing else. So I was able to get sort of a little workaround, and I'll spare you the technical things that I did to do this, but just to say that I'm back on Facebook. I've had to reinstate all of the people that I did stay in contact with, and we'll see how it goes from there. I have, though, increased the security on Facebook now, so that I didn't have there in place before, and hopefully I won't get hacked again. But just a pain in the butt. I'll probably say a little bit more about that tomorrow on my vlog, because I think it's going to be part of what I'm pissed off with this week. Part 2, because last week I talked about being pissed off with Facebook. So, anyways. So, what's newsworthy right now before we get into our main theme today? Carbon tax. Have you heard about the carbon tax? Apparently,
well, that's in our country.
in our country, but also other countries in the world, have all agreed, with the exception of the United States, because Trump pulled out of it, at the Paris Accord, that how the world essentially is going to cut back on pollution. preserve the environment, you know, all that kind of stuff, global warming and everything else. And we have a certain thing, I don't know how it works, but we have committed to doing something by a certain year. And our government, our federal government, has decided that the way to do that is to charge us a carbon tax, which will be added to our gas bills, both our fuel gas bills, our housing, heating costs, and stuff like that. Well, our Ontario government has opted out of it. They say no, they're not going to do that. Ontario has its own plan for this, which isn't a good plan, because they're claiming that they're going to make the biggest polluters, which would be your corporate interests, pay higher taxes for all of this, which I don't see paying money how that reduces our carbon footprint. I really don't. At the provincial level or at the national level, I don't get it. I don't see how that works. But in our case, in the province of Ontario, with, you know, our lovely mini Trump, Doug Ford, he's not going to charge big businesses. He's going to throw it all back on our shoulders and make it sound like he's giving us a break. He's such an idiot. But anyways, so that's the latest thing.
Prezi wrote, people are addicted to Facebook. They can't quit it. Like people refusing to leave banks and switch to credit unions. But I don't think that's a good analogy.
Hi, Andy.
But
No.
Because I did the other way around. I used to belong to a credit union, switched to a bank, only because the credit union had less services than the bank did. So.
Yeah, I used to belong to a credit union too. It was a teacher's one, and I used it basically as a forced saving because I had them take a certain amount of money every paycheck and put it in there, and it wasn't easy at that time to get into that account to take your money out. You physically had to go in, sit down with one of the officers, and say, "I want this amount of money on my account," and they would write you a check off the credit union for that amount of money. So you thought twice about it, and I joined it on purpose because of that, because it was a forced saving, and I'm glad I did.
See, I originally joined a credit union that I used to belong to, which was Civil Service Credit Union, because I was part of the civil service. And then, and I got it originally because they had free checking. But then after as time went on, people don't do checking anymore, right? And they had only one banking machine in the city we live in, and I had to go to that banking machine. Otherwise, I would be charged $2 or $3 going to another banking machine, somewhere else. So I figured that was useless, so I just decided to go back to a big bank.
Yeah, Tracy says she wants to get solar but can't get enough on my roof because of zoning laws to go off grid. I don't know though if anybody can actually go completely off grid with just the solar panel idea.
It depends on where you live.
I guess.
I mean, in Canada, there's pretty much no way because a lot of our electricity goes to heating.
Yeah.
So not that we have electric heat, we have a furnace that runs with gas.
Yeah.
But still, it takes a lot of electricity to run the furnace. So.
And you can bet that somewhere down the road, you hear about a lot of people trying to go off the grid and all that kind of stuff, but you can bet that somewhere, at least in North America, the North American governments are going to find a way to make money from people going off grid somehow. They're going to do something. They'll enact some sort of laws that say you have to pay this, or you have to pay that, or whatever. Because you know what they are. Nothing's free anymore. But anyways, and just that comment too about Facebook that Tracy said, people are addicted to Facebook, they can't quit it. Yeah, exactly.
Don't mind you, I haven't gone on it as frequently as I used to.
No, but I really felt out of the loop when I didn't have it for a week.
Well, no, you only felt out of the loop because when we went to Ottawa to the thing, we found out that there's a men's quilting group that are on Facebook. So I joined it, and he fell out of the loop because I was on it and he wasn't. So
yeah, it is addictive. Tracy says, MeWe, an alternative Facebook. Yes, Tracy, I saw your comment about that, and I went to it, and I actually joined it.
The only problem with that is everybody else has to join.
Yeah, everybody else has to join it too. I know that they advertise they don't have any advertising for it and all that kind of stuff, and it was easy to join it, but none of the people I know are on it. And I can pretty much bet that anybody that's on Facebook and hasn't had any problems with Facebook are not going to switch over to the other system. You know, once they get hacked or whatever, then they might think about it. But I don't think it's going to replace Facebook. But this may be a moot point anyways, because Facebook is in a lot of trouble with a lot of governments around the world.
I think it'll eventually morph into something else.
Probably.
But it has to.
But basically what Facebook has done that has killed Facebook for a lot of people is the amount of advertising.
Yeah.
And
well, that became about because they became a publicly traded company.
yeah.
So they have to appease their shareholders that they're making money.
Yeah. Well, then, and on top of it, how convoluted the structure is. And what I mean by that is, it isn't a simple system to use. There are too many interconnections between people, groups, things for pay, all kinds of stuff in there, and trying to find things and to keep the timeline straight through it.
I was reading something interesting today about
What's that?
Facebook and that they're going to come out with their own cryptocurrency.
Oh, of course they are. Yeah, it'll be the next thing. So really, it takes you back to the days when we used to all complain about Microsoft. Now, you
Everybody
don't.
complains about Facebook.
Yeah, everybody complains
or
about
Google
Facebook
or whatever.
or Google. Yeah. Well, Google's not so bad, but Google is a little bit more subtle. Google is still manipulating you, obviously, like with YouTube, because Google owns YouTube. So anyway,
And I've also noticed on YouTube they've started playing more mainstream commercials on them.
what on YouTube?
Yeah,
Yes,
probably
they
because
have.
nobody watches the TV commercials.
And they've got them too. Some of those commercials you cannot skip. So,
Anyway, we
watching
should go
regular
back
TV.
to our original
yeah, well, I
topic.
was getting there, but I was just seeing. Precy says Zuckerberg is a bot. Yeah, wouldn't doubt it. And Google is pissing off Precy. None of my blogs are able to be searched. Yeah, I know they keep changing the algorithms for everything. So that takes us then to we're talking a little bit about finances and form of money and credit unions and things like that. So today we've had the suggestion that we talk about retirement life, as I want to call it, life after work kind of a thing. So we're going to share some of our experiences and the things that we thought about, went through before we retired and what we go through now and the change. Because one thing I have found with retirement is it is life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. And you need to be prepared for that change in life. And a lot of people, believe it or not, are not. They think that what retirement means is I don't have to go to work every day. But what they don't necessarily think about is their financial situation, their health situation, their mental health situation, their social aspects of all of that. And all of these things are stuff that you need to really, if you're not already retired, if you're thinking about retiring, you're going to retire in the next year or two, whatever, you need to do some pre-planning for this. And those of you that are retired, or even those of you that aren't retired but are thinking about retirement, jump in here at any point in time with your reflections on things. We're going to talk about it from our point of view. And so this is not a scientific study or anything like that. We're just going to talk about what we experience. And the first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about, for me first, how I pre-plan for my retirement. I retired before Walter did, and I was retired for,
6 years.
was it 6 years before you retired?
Well, how many years?
How long have you been retired now?
Almost 2.
Okay, so 5 years. It was
Okay.
5 years, because I'll be retired actually this month. My retirement party was June the 12th, 7 years ago. So, hard to believe. That's one thing about retirement. Time goes by really fast. Okay, so what did I do? Well, I'm going to show you something. Now, those of you that are crafters know what this is. It's a smash journal. They were all the rage back about 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And these were these blank journals, and you stuck things in them. They had a whole series of accessories and pens and things, and you could stick things in it. Well, I bought myself a smash journal, but this was my retirement planning journal. Now, what I mean by that is I kept this with me every day, and it would sit on my desk at school. And when a thought came to me about what I might want to do when I retire, or things I should consider before I retire, I would jot them down. And I've got them all tabbed on the side here with topics. In fact, I haven't looked at this in years now. But at the time, it just made me think about things that I might need to do. So one of the things in pre-planning is you got to get your mind around the fact that you are no longer going to be working. And for some people, that's actually more difficult than it sounds. It wasn't for me. I enjoyed my job, but I wanted to be young enough to do things that I was planning to do when I retired and have my health, like travel. So it wasn't hard for me. But you've worked with people who retired and then have gone back.
Yeah, I know a couple of ladies that have at least one lady that I associate with that was from work. Her job was her life. It was her life, and she actually retired a little bit earlier than she wanted to because of there was a change in the amount of benefits that she would get if she had retired later, and so she thought, well, she would just retire. A little earlier, even like she was qualified to retire and everything else, right? So, but then she couldn't figure out what to do with herself when she retired. And she was the type of person that needed that reassurance from people that, oh, you've done a good job and all this other stuff. And she just couldn't cope with being retired. She thought for some reason that the company that we worked for would beg her to come back, which they didn't. Oh. And so she was a little bit upset with that, but everybody's replaceable. And so she ended up getting another job somewhere else. And I don't know if she's happy working. That's what she wants to do.
And Tracy says a lot of people, especially men, their identity is wrapped up in being the provider, being at work, and it's hard afterwards. Exactly. There are people who don't know what to do with themselves if they're not working. And there's several reasons why people work besides the reason to make money, put food on the table, shelter, all that kind of stuff. One, it's a sense of accomplishment and that you're important. And as Walter said, when people leave these jobs, they think that the whole place is going to fall apart without them. It doesn't. Everybody is replaceable. I found that, I had a reputation within my own school board. People knew who I was because I had sat on committees at the board level. I had done provincial things, everything like that. So people knew who I was. What? After 31 years, you'd think so. However, do you think they care that I'm not there anymore? No. No one's on the phone saying, oh, Steve, what would you have done? I did get one compliment a few years ago. A guy who took over my department, I was the department head, actually after a couple of department heads before him, which were people that I knew, but this was a new guy from outside. I guess the department didn't like how he was running things, and I guess one of the guys in my department, who was a guy that I was going to say I didn't have a lot of respect for. That's not true. I did. But he was a little bit of a rebel in things. He didn't want to play necessarily by the rules. He turned around and paid me the supreme compliment because I guess he said in one of their department meetings with this new guy, that's not the way Steve would have done it. Meaning you don't know what you're doing, buddy. But that guy doesn't know who I am, and he doesn't really care how Steve did it because Steve's not there anymore doing it. So, I'm over that now. Nobody is that important in the world. Really? Nobody. So I guess one of the things in your pre-planning for retirement, if you've got a job that you have had a position of responsibility in, and you had people working under you or looking towards you for guidance and what to do next, you won't have that anymore when you retire. So if your identity is based upon that, my suggestion to you is never retire because you might as well die in the job. Because
yeah, like I've known people that have had a heart attack after they retired.
Yeah.
Because they can't handle the fact that they're not doing the work or being complimented or managing people or something like that. They're so wrapped up in work. Like this lady that I said that she had to get another job. She was also a micromanager where she basically took on all the work even her employees, a lot of people didn't like her for that. She would go on holidays and take her work cell phone with her and answer questions while she was on holidays. That's how dedicated she was.
Yeah. Dedicated, but it may be dedicated, but you got to look at the what's they call it, the law of diminishing returns.
Right.
There are teachers I know who could have retired years before they actually did, but they kept going. And the reason they kept going was because they had a sense of accomplishment in their job that they didn't want to let go. That if they let, if
some noise.
yeah, oh, Walter's going to churn the margaritas. Okay, so they when they finally did retire, they still didn't retire. They did what we call double dipping. They went on the supply list, or as the Americans call it, substitute teacher list, and they'd go in and babysit. They'd take in their newspaper, they'd go in, sit in a class all day, make sure the kids weren't killing each other, and of course the kids weren't doing any work anyways, and they collect a paycheck. And supply teachers get paid, not too badly, but they're already getting a pension too, as well as being paid. And one person told me the reason they did it was because they wanted to go south every winter, and this was their money to go south out of it. Okay, and then everybody said to me, are you going to supply teach when you retire? And I said, hell no. Why do I want to do that? I'm retired. I gave 31 years of my life to this job. I enjoyed my job. I liked my job. It's time to go and explore other opportunities before I'm 6 feet under, kind of a thing. So no, I never supply taught. And yes, the money was tempting, but that's part of your pre-planning. Okay, so that takes us to the whole question of finances, because that's a worry for a lot of people. Now, again, you got to do your homework on these things. Hi, Brenda. You've got to, first of all, take a look at your finances. One thing a lot of people do when they retire is they're still in debt. One, they have a mortgage still on their house. Two, they're paying off car loans or loans for other things that they have. Three, they haven't really set any extra money aside for retirement. Now, this is a very complex issue. I was lucky. I was a teacher. I already had a pension plan that I contributed to the tune of about 12% of every paycheck into that, but now that guarantees me an income for the rest of my life, which is also inflation protected. So every year I get a slight raise given the cost of living, kind of a deal. Is it a humongous amount of money? No. It's about half of what I was making when I was a teacher. But here's what I don't have to worry about anymore. One, I don't have to worry about a lot of gas in my car driving to school back and forth every day.
Yeah, I get to pay for it.
He gets to pay for it because he drives me everywhere because it's driving Ms. Daisy. Okay, so there's another tip. Make sure you're with a partner who can drive and has their own car and the car's paid off and they will take you wherever you want to go. So make sure you have all your debts paid down. Two, make sure you have been putting money, and this is actually for a lot younger people because it's younger people that don't do this. Because for them, retirement is 50,000 years in the future. I started a registered retirement plan, fund, in the early 90s. Not my early 90s, I haven't hit that yet. In the early 90s. I wish I had started putting money into that as soon as I started teaching. Because I was like 10 years, 11 years into teaching before I started that. And I could have a lot more money in that plan now than I had then. But yes, I have a pension, but I have this that I've saved. Now, I haven't touched this money. It's in mutual funds. It makes a little money. It goes up, it goes down, whatever. But that's basically money to keep me in the home when I get there at some point in time. But I didn't, when I retired, I did not have car payments. Our mortgage was paid off. We owed nobody nothing. I didn't have any balances on credit cards, nothing. And that was all planned and all purposely done for that. Yes, there might have been, by some people's standards, some sacrifices that had to be made in order to do that. And yes, I had a decent job, okay? And I realized that. I realized I had a decent job that allowed me probably a little bit more freedom to be to pay off these kind of things than maybe some people have. However, in my own defense, I spent years in school to get where I got, plus re-education, retraining all the time on a regular basis, and the whole bit. So yeah, I picked my career.
And plus, over the years, like all the years we've lived together and stuff too, is we've always been fairly careful with our cash,
Yeah,
right? Like, I mean, we haven't splurged a lot and stuff like that. So, I mean, we splurge a little bit more than the average person because we're two guys, we don't have any kids and stuff like that, so.
and so a lot of people go, well, yeah, you don't have any kids. But here's another thing about kids. I know people who won't go to retirement because they're still paying for their kids' university or college educations. What's wrong with this picture? Tell the little buggers to get out there and get a job and finance their own education with it. Why should people in their mid-50s who are getting ready for retirement be still paying for adult children? And a lot of them are. Some of those adult children go out, get married, get divorced, but bring the babies home, and grandpa and grandma
Our babies.
are babysitting to help them out. Okay, yeah, I get it that people want to do things for their children, okay?
Okay.
But where does it stop?
Prezi made a comment, says she lives in a town with huge retirement village. The folks that are in wheelchairs and Zimmer frames, whatever that is,
What's a Zimmer frame?
are still dressed in their 1940s clothing. The ones in sneakers and jazzed up are with it and young.
And she says you must stay fresh and curious. That's important, Prezi. You do. You can't, some people too, figure that once they retire, all they're going to do is sleep in all day, watch TV all day, and get fat. And that's what happens. And then they have a heart attack and die out of it all. No, you've got to go out and explore other things. Some people have the attitude that because you're retired, you're old. So therefore, that's what old people do. Nothing. No. My mother's a fine example of what not to do when you get to that age. And I use that as a daily lesson. Anytime I think to myself, oh, I don't really want to do that, and I don't have a good reason for not wanting to do that, just because I'm thinking it's something a little different and I've never done that before. No, put yourself out there and do it. And 9 times out of 10, I'm really glad that I did with it. So yeah, attitude is very important in retirement because you can just sit there on the couch and dry up as a vegetable. And there are a lot of people that do that. Zimmer frames are walkers, Prezi says.
Oh, okay.
So attitude is important. But back to the pre-planning. So I did this little journal. And I think I learned about doing this. This wasn't an original idea to me. I think it was in one of the books I read. I bought several different books. I went looking for them yesterday. And I think they went out in when we had the big clean out. And I got rid of all kinds of books. I think they went out to Value Village. And I can't remember the titles on them. But there was 3 or 4 that I bought and I read. And they were very, very helpful on many levels. So I recommend that you go on Amazon or you go to your library or whatever, just do research, just do a Google search on books on retirement. And there's tons of them out there. And read at least 1 or 2 of those because they won't have all the answers, but they will give you things that you hadn't thought of before that you can work with. I found them very helpful. So that's all part of your retirement plan. And also what you need to pre-plan too is what do you want to do with your time when you're retired? I asked retired teachers about this because I was a little scared of the idea of retirement. I mean, it was kind of thrilling, but then I was thinking, can I afford this? Am I going to be bored? Am I going to wish I hadn't done this? What's going to be the problem? And every one of them, without an exception, said to me, you will be so busy, busier than you've ever been in your life. You're going to wonder when you're retired how you did everything you did in your life when you were working. And you want to know something? Absolutely right. Absolutely. I am never bored. There is always something I can do. Now, speaking of that, you need hobbies. Okay? I was fortunate. I've always had hobbies. I always kept myself busy. I had all my crafts, and then, of course, talking about keeping things new, as you know, I started quilting. So that one's really keeping my mind engaged because there's a lot of mathematics in quilting and stuff like that, and there's always new things to learn. So that keeps me going with all that kind of stuff. But I have a wide variety of interests. We travel. What are Walter's interests? What did you have? What do you do?
Well, I know I don't do a lot. I still do research on the internet. I don't. My retirement hasn't gone quite as not say well. I mean, I like being retired. I don't like. I'm glad I'm retired. I don't want to work. But I probably aren't as efficient at what I do. Then I don't feel bored or anything
No.
like that. But
Well, that's why I make him drive me everywhere. He gives him something to do. But actually, no, he's pretty busy. I mean, he does things around the house. Always said when he's going to retire, there's all kinds of things around the house he's going to do. Well, he's been retired for almost 2
yeah,
years.
I haven't done as
Haven't
many
got all
things
those together. But, you know, he's a day trader kind of a thing.
And I like to.
Stare at a computer screen
Well, I
and
do,
research.
yeah.
And go, yeah, that's what you did your whole life.
Yeah, I mean
But-
that's sort of. I sort of still do my job because my job was sort
Hi,
of
Mel.
researching computer stuff, and I still do that. So, and I also trade stocks, and I do a lot of. I read a lot of information on different stocks and stuff, and
Yeah,
not that I'm wealthy or anything.
I was going to say one thing you want to talk about. We were talking about finances in that. Well, he's making money, not a lot, but he's making some money. It's better than a kick in the head. Okay.
And then, so that sort of research, and then I sort of feel like should be doing some crafts and stuff like that, but I haven't really gotten around to it.
Well, he
that
finished
much.
his table runner today.
Finally, yeah.
Finally.
And then, but I've been doing stuff outside, like our lawn looks pretty decent for a change. That I never seemed to ever get around to that when I was working. So that, and I've got some other projects I need to do outside this summer, and I plan to do that too. And
So everybody approaches this from a different point of view. I'm the kind of person that always has to have a project, and I always have several projects that on a go. I've always been that way my whole life. So that's what keeps me excited and interested in my life and keeps me going. Walter's a little bit more laid back, and that's fine. He's still not just sitting around rotting in front of a TV.
no, I don't generally watch TV during the day.
No. But a lot of people who retire, that's it. And then you become immobile, and well, the rest is like my mother in history.
One thing I probably don't do enough is exercise enough, but I think I should walk a little bit more because I've also put on a little bit of weight. So
Well, okay, that's the other thing I was going to come to about some health concerns. But before we do that, I just wanted to talk about this pre-planning. So I've mentioned a year before you retire, get yourself a journal and just use it as a brainstorming thing. Just a thought comes to you and go, you know, I might want to try that someday. Write it down, but don't dismiss it. Don't let your inner critic come out when you do that. Like if it says, I want to climb Mount Everest, don't let your inner critic go and go, yeah, that's too expensive. I've never climbed a mountain before. This. No. You don't make excuses for it. It's just for you. No one else has to look at these things. Make it, if you want to call it a wish list, a bucket list. I don't like the term bucket list because it sounds like it's a countdown to your death. But just when ideas come to your head, put them down there. Maybe you will do them, maybe you won't. It doesn't matter. You're just developing ideas and thoughts. You're thinking about what you're going to do when you have the time to do it.
actually, it was some interesting things is that, like if we plan a trip now or something, that since both of us are retired, providing we don't have any other commitments, I don't have to necessarily book a flight that goes from weekend to weekend, right? Or
No.
book, like we went to Ottawa this week, we went on Wednesday and came back on Friday, right? So whereas in the past, we would have always gone on a weekend or
Yeah.
something.
But I'm going to hold you back on that one for a second because we are going to talk about
Yeah.
the travel option in there because that's what a lot of people think they want to do when they retire. But I'm just looking here at the comments, and Andy says, I had a 3-part plan. Buy an SUV, bought 2 years ago, I'll pay for it. Buy a dog, got a boxer puppy, and take road trips with my dog, started getting used to longer and longer car rides. And that's good, Andy. And actually, the journal can go beyond pre-planning. Once you get into retirement, and I tried to do this, but I didn't keep it up because I found I didn't need to keep it up. But it's always good to write down other possibilities, because everything everything offers a possibility is what I'm saying. Don't dismiss anything as being stupid or dumb or I could never do that, because that's a defeatist attitude. Yeah, you may not do it, but never say never, because you never know. Like, I didn't know that I was going to hang off the side of the CN Tower about a few months after, in my first year of retirement, but I did, and that just walked into my lap, kind of a thing. But it would have been easy for me to say no, I'm not going to do this, but I didn't, and I did it, and I'm glad I did it. Besides, it scared the crap out of Walter.
Prezi says, I've seen a lot of retirees selling everything and buying RVs and going tiny house living.
Yeah.
However, I tend to disagree with that attitude to sell everything and
Maybe you want to requalify that instead of saying you disagree with it. I think what you're saying is that's not for you.
yeah.
Okay? But for somebody else, it might be. And there's a little piece inside of me. We watch those tiny homes things on YouTube and stuff like that. And there's a little teeny piece in me that wishes I would have the nerve to be able to do that. But it's not for me either.
There's sometimes, okay, what I'm saying is I know a lot of people that have, as soon as they retire, not waited a year after, but right as soon as they retire, sell their house and move to their cottage or something like that they have up north, right? And so they do that. They get right away from the city. They want to live there because they like being at their cottage all summer, and then they move into this cottage. But what they forget about is that the cottage is sort of stuck in the middle of nowhere. And in Canada, you have a pile of snow every winter. And so then they get housebound for part of the winter and stuck there, type of thing. And then one of them develops some sort of medical condition, and they're far, far away from any hospital. So then they end up having to sell the place and get an apartment closer to the hospital, type of thing.
And I've heard a lot of people say, yeah, when I retire, we're selling the house and we're moving to the cottage, and that's where we're going to live. It's far away from civilization. It's peaceful. We love it there. We go up every summer. We wish we could stay there longer, and all this kind of stuff. But as Walter says, then you move up there permanently. You've got a house. You've got to cut the grass. You've got to shovel the snow if you're in a place that has snow. You have maintenance. You have upkeep, and you're not any younger. In fact, you're getting older, and some of those jobs you're not always going to be able to manage to do or you want to do. So then you got to either hire out, which can be expensive, or you have to relocate. And if you have health problems and you're far away from a hospital or medical facility, and we have friends that have done this, and this is what's happening to them right now, they have to drive to the city.
Friend right now, his wife has developed cancer, and he has to take a big trip to the hospital every when she needs her chemotherapy and stuff like that.
And he's like 2.5 hour drive from where they have to go with it. So, it sounds great, get away from it all and the whole bit. And then these ones that buy the RVs, I'm going to see the country, I'm going to travel all over North America, the United States,
but
Canada.
What happens when you can't drive anymore and stuff like that?
And there's maintenance and there's costs involved with that. And then there's the people who downsize. And you hear about this a lot. People now suddenly, like, their families are gone. There's two of them. They're living in a 4,000 square foot house. They want to size it down to a condominium because they don't want to have to worry about cutting grass. They don't have to worry about snow. If they go travel a lot, they can just lock their door and away they go. They know everything is secure in the condo. But what they're not taking into consideration is, depending on how much the condo cost you to buy in the first place, and the condos are not cheap in our country anyways, for 300 square feet, you're paying $600,000-$700,000. So basically you're moving into a walk-in closet. And the other thing too is you got condo fees usually on top of that, which can be very, very pricey on top of it all. So depending on what you came from before, how much you got from them, what your finances are all about, that's why you have to sit down and you have to look at your finances well before you retire. You have to do some planning.
Not only that, I've also heard of people going into a condo. They're used to living in a house, and there's maintenance that has to be done to the house. And the idea is to get away from the maintenance and stuff. But the problem is that they get into a condo, and then they get bored out of their tears because there's nothing to do.
Yeah, I have some relatives. Well, they're in-laws to my brother, and they decided to downsize their house. They had a big lot. They've moved into a condo, and the husband is not happy because he was used to puttering around in his garden and doing his lawn work, and he liked doing that. Now he's got nothing in the condo, and he didn't have any other hobbies. So he's not liking it. He's kind of miserable with the whole thing. And he feels trapped. And when you start to feel depressed and miserable, you're going to die quicker. I can tell you that for sure. That's a
A lot of people are writing a pile of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's take a look at what people are saying. Let's back up to Jody says, great idea, Stephen, on the journal idea. I had 2 goals but haven't done it yet, but it's still on my list. 1, learn to swim. 2, take a beginning photography class since I'm a scrapbooker. Yeah, and those are great, and you should do those things. One of my goals was I wanted to take a professional bookbinding course, but the only place I can do that's in Toronto, and it's in the evenings, and I'd have to drive to Toronto to do it, and it's not very accessible from the public transportation system, so I didn't do it. It was also very expensive, but it's in my journal, and who's to say that I won't do it yet? Who's to say? I'm not going to close it out from that idea. Tracy says, I've seen a lot of retirees selling everything and buying RVs. Okay, we're talking about that. And Andy says, my son wanted me to move to California after retirement. I told him I want to do one major life change at a time. Very good point, okay, about life changes. Retirement is a major life change. Major life change. Now, I took a seminar a year before I retired. I paid for this. It was on a Saturday. It was at the local college. And Walter kind of poo-pooed the whole idea of me taking this, and I kind of thought this might be a waste of $100 and some odd. But it turned out it wasn't. The lady that was there was having a conversation about all these things that we're talking about, and I found it very useful. But I went up to her during a break, and I said to her, okay, you've been talking about this and whatnot, but I said, you haven't yet referred to what happens if your parents are elderly and you're retired, because mine were at the time, and my father had the beginnings of dementia and the whole bit. And I was not prepared for her answer. She turned around and says, you're screwed. That's how she said it. You're screwed. And I looked at her and says, yeah, but really? She says, no, you're really screwed. You won't have a life. That's what she said to me. You are going to spend all your time looking after them when you're retired, because they will dump everything on you because they consider you having all this time in the world, and that's what you can do. I poo-pawed it. Guess what? She was absolutely bang on with that. It's exactly what happened. To the day I retired. To the day. My life, for the first 4 years of my retirement, 5 years of retirement, basically was taken up with my parents. It still is, but it's not as bad now that mom's in the home. And dad, unfortunately, has passed away. But it was sheer hell. It was hell financially for me. It was hell emotionally for me. Even physically. We would get calls in the middle of the night to come over to my parents' house to try and get my father up off the floor because he had fallen. And there were other things that went on. I'm not going to get into all of them. But she was damn right. So that is something you probably cannot plan for. Okay? You might need, though, to put that into your head that this may be a problem. And I know that she said in the seminar, too, that as soon as you're retired, if you have children, grown children, and they have children, guess what? You're free babysitting service. This is pretty true because Walter's sister's going through this right now.
She made the precedent that she would babysit whenever they seemed to have a crisis where they had to babysit. So, and then my nephew decided he wanted to live closer to his parents, and I think part of that was to be babysitting, right? And last year he made an arrangement with his wife, and he moved in with his parents, and
They're two little girls.
Their two little girls. The two little girls are going to school that's local. His wife is still in the old house that's about an hour or an hour and a half away. And they keep saying they're moving, but it's almost been a year now, and
They haven't put their house up for sale. They haven't looked for a new house in this area.
Meanwhile, my sister is babysitting the kids. They're taking them to school every day, so twice a day they have to go one time to take the kids to school, one time to pick the kids up from school, and now mind you, I think they go they have the weekends off, but in the summertime, they're going to have the kids there all day.
Yep. And it's taken a real toll on her because she's no spring chicken.
My sister's 69 and her husband turned 70 this year.
Yeah. And her husband has had a heart attack at one point, not while the kids were with them, but all of that kind of thing. So, you know, but that's what this lady in the seminar warned. She says, everybody in your family will figure because you've got time now on your hands that you can do all kinds of things for them. And it's true. That's what's happening.
I have another friend that's exactly the same thing. He has two daughters, and him and his wife babysit all the time.
So how do you get around that situation? Okay, we don't have children, so we don't have to worry about that. Those of you that have children, you want to do the most you can for your kids. I get that. However, you have to decide for yourself, how much can you do before it jeopardizes your own health and welfare? You have to make the decision, because if you don't, this is the problem with his sister. She didn't put her foot down. And it's gone on now too darn long, to the point where she really can't put her foot down. Well, she can.
Well, she's never been able to. So then what happens is now I phone her up and she goes, I want my retirement back. And I said, well, you have to talk to your son.
You got to make it fun.
But she won't, because she's afraid of alienating them.
So, you know, you got to think about this too. When you retire, this is your time. This is your time in your life to do what you want to do on your terms. So if you don't reach out there and grab it by the horns and take control of it, and you let everybody else walk all over you, then what's the point of being retired? If you want to get walked all over, work. Because we all know that no matter what kind of job you do, there's always somebody there that's walking over top of you all the time. So let's back up and see what people are saying here.
Julie Chambers is the next one. It says, I started doing my history degree when I finished working.
That's great. You want to know something? In my journal, I put, and this is one thing I probably won't do, I want to get my PhD. Why? For the simple reason, I wanted people to call me doctor afterwards. But what was I going to do with it? It would be my PhD in probably English or in education, something like that. And I'd have to probably go to a university that's in Toronto. It's away, so you got the commute. It's expensive. And is it that important to me now? No, but it was one of the things in my list of things that I thought might be a possibility with it. So but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy taking other courses. They just may not lead to degrees. That's fine. Where are we?
Miss Purple Potato says, I went into organization mode as soon as I retired and sold unwanted unwanted stuff. Watched a ton of Swedish death cleaning videos to get into the mindset. Yeah, we still got to get rid of stuff.
Yeah, we keep saying that. Every time we open a cupboard, go, you know, we really need to clean those out. But quite frankly, I don't like wasting my retirement time on humdrum, mundane things. But it does need to be done.
Oh, that Komori decluttering? Yeah. I can't stand hers.
Oh, does it bring you joy? Does it bring you joy? If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. Okay.
And then Prezi says,
do you bring me joy?
No.
Good, get rid of it.
That's Prezi says, that's why I see men walking behind their wives in the supermarket. There's nothing for them to do at the retirement village.
Oh, there is one of the things I also pity. Straight men. Married men. Oh, I'm sorry, ladies, because I know a bunch of you are going to get upset with this, but ladies always have the honey-do list. And
sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Right.
Right in time. Okay.
Married to this.
Yeah.
Anyways, they always have the honey-do list, and as soon as the guy is retired, She's already got the whole thing planned out. My mother had it all planned out when my father retired. I think that's one reason why my father developed dementia, just to get out of it all the time. He didn't have a moment to himself to breathe when he still had his faculties around. She had it all planned out all the time for him.
That's a poor guy that lives next door too.
Yep. His wife is constantly redecorating and he's constantly having to do the work for it, you know. So, yeah, so there's a difference between when men retire and when women retire as well. Now, okay, ladies, before you get upset with me and the whole bit, I know what you're going to say is, yeah, well, I worked all my life and I still had to come home and I still had to cook and I still had to look after the kids and I still had to clean and I still had to do the laundry. And now that I'm retired, I'm still having to clean and I'm still having to do the laundry and I'm still having to cook and I'm now looking after the grandchildren. Yeah, I get it. Just say no. Don't want to hear the excuses. I won't get it. I won't answer to these. Just saying, okay? Yeah, everybody's life is worse than somebody else's.
Meliart says, retirement is so far away for me that I haven't made any plans yet. When retired someday, I'm hoping to move to the countryside, hoping to study, hoping to start my own business.
Okay, so Mel, you're saying it's so many years down the road. Here's what I'm going to say to you about that. It's never too early to plan. And that's where I come back to this journal idea. I don't know if you were here when I was talking about the journal idea, but I would start a journal now. And just every now and then when an idea comes to your head, because you know how ideas are. You're doing something completely different. You're not even thinking about retirement or something else. And suddenly you get to say, maybe I could learn to skydive. Put it in your journal. Put it in your journal. Just have it there. That's just for you, nobody else. Put it in the journal because you never know. But it is never, you're never too young to plan for retirement. You have to, especially in this day and age, because of what things are costing and the whole bit. I mean, what is it? Personal financial advisors, which poo-poo on them. What are they saying now? In order for you to enjoy a comfortable retirement, you need to have something like $1.5 million in the bank.
Well, I think that's a lot of it has to do with whether you have a pension or not.
Well, that could be. Also, I guess it depends on the lifestyle you want to grow accustomed to. And that's another thing about retirement. If you were not able to do a round the world trip every year, if you were not able to stay in 5-star hotels every time you went someplace, if you didn't eat every once or twice a week out at a 5-star restaurant before you retired, you're not going to be able to do that after you retire either, unless you win the lottery on it all, okay? Some people have unrealistic expectations of retirement, and that puts them into depression. Oh yes, now that we're retired, we are going to go to all the places we had never been able to have time to see before in our lives. Travel costs money. Have you planned for that? And that brings me back to planning. Sure, if you've got some destinations, like for us, it was Australia, our first trip. I always said that one of the things I wanted to do when I retired was go to Australia because when I worked, I could only take my holidays when school was out. And in my naivety, in my innocence, I thought that the only time you could travel in Australia, you'd have to go when it was their summer, which was our winter, not realizing that their winter is nothing compared to our winter. It's still warm there.
The other day when we were coming back from Ottawa, it was 13 degrees. I still was wearing short sleeves.
Yeah, I was wearing shorts. No, I wasn't wearing shorts, but.
And got out of the car and I said, "Oh boy, the Australians would freeze to death."
Freeze to death. But you see, the point I'm making is that was on my list. I wanted to go to Australia. Flights are expensive, the whole bit. However, and then we had the excuse for several years as long as the cat was alive, we couldn't go because we didn't want to leave her for, a month, kind of a thing and everything like that. Well, then the cat died, so that freed that up. And you want to know something? We were able to arrange it, and obviously we have because we've been 3 times since. But that was all planning, and yeah, so we don't go out for dinner every night. We don't stay, like we went to Ottawa for 2 nights. We could have stayed in the hotel that was $600 a night for 2 nights, $1,200. No, we stayed in one that was $130 a night with it, because all we needed was a place to sleep, basically. And I mean, when it comes down to it, do you use all the amenities that these?
We never use a pool.
We never use the pool. We never use the gym.
Yes.
You know, all that kind of stuff. So
Well, I don't like getting into pool where 1,000 other kids have peed in, so.
yeah, well,
Um,
true. So
And
you,
then Miss Purple Potato said, you got that right, Stephen. I agreed to babysit 1.5 days a week, but refused to do any more. It's exhausting.
yeah, and I agree with you. But the problem is, and I think this is a problem, especially for the ladies. I think there's a guilt complex. Oh, I need to help my children out, and I love my grandchildren, so I do it. And this is what his sister's
Well,
problem
actually,
is.
what problem my sister had is that my mother said to her when she had kids, that said, I'm willing to babysit if you really need to go somewhere or you want a night out or something like that. But she says, or if there's an emergency, but I'm not babysitting every day, right? And my sister always kind of resented that, you know? And so when her son started having children, she says, well, I'm not going to do what my mother's did. I'll babysit, right? When I'm needed, right? And so what ended up happening is that basically, I think the reason my mother said that to her, she had seen other people that got into the situation where she's
Yeah.
in right now, so.
Now, there's two comments here that I want to address that I think are interesting. Jody says, I worked 40 years with the government. I still dream about work, and it's been 14 months being retired. When does that go away? 2 years. Why do I make that so definite? First 2 years of my retirement, I was the same. I scheduled my day around the bell schedule of my school. I had an internal clock. When 11:35 came around, I knew it was lunch. Okay? I was still thinking in periods. Okay, from 8:45 to 10:20, I'm in period 1. Now I'm in period 2, and all this stuff. I went to bed, well, I still do, but I always went to bed at 9 o'clock because I would be up at, in some years of my career, I was up as early as 4 o'clock in the morning. Don't ask why. And it's really hard because you've had those routines for so many years of your life. And it took me 2 years. It took 2 years to suddenly get used to the idea that I no longer work for a school board. I don't have a school. I don't have to mark papers. I'm not accountable to administrators or to parents or anything like that. But it took a good 2 years. Now, how long has it been taking you?
Okay, well, I'm almost 2 years, and probably, I mean, I still think about work. I still think occasionally about work. It's more about the people that I worked with. We still have retirement lunches every once in a while. Conversation isn't really about work or anything like that anymore. We don't, we're interested in hearing if there's something drastic that happens at work or something or whatever. I don't really dream about it, but I probably right now don't really think a lot about my ex job anymore. I worked 31 years at the location that I left when I retired. Prior to that, I worked 9 years in Toronto at a similar job. So yeah, I had about 40 years in. So for working every day. And I guess what's still a little bit weird, and you still have it, is that let's do something on the weekend.
Yes.
Right? And I'm sitting there going, well, why don't we do it during the week when there's nobody
Yeah.
around?
Ash, I still
You know?
have that syndrome that, that really you can't do anything importance until the weekend. And I've been retired now 7 years. So,
Now, mind you, I wasn't retired, so what happened is I would be working during the week and up until the last year and a half.
yeah, so for
So we
5
would-
years of my
We
retirement,
would have to still do stuff.
we've had
on the
to just
weekend.
still do stuff when he could do it. So, yeah, so I guess, and that brings up something else I want to talk about, but we'll talk about that in a minute, about what it's like when two of you are retired, or one of you is retired and the other one is not yet retired. But we'll talk about that in a minute because I want to address some of the other comments that are here. Let's see, there was one here. Oh, Andy says, a month before I retired, I created a daily schedule for 1 month so I could transition into a new routine. I tried that too. You know, see, there's a lot of things that are in common here with everybody, I think. I was used to a very regimented schedule, being a school teacher. So I tried to schedule my day. And actually, I still do, but I do it not so much on paper. I have an agenda, and I list. It's a month by month agenda, and I list anything I have to do. You know, appointments, things like that. But I also list daily things that I want to accomplish on certain days of the week. So in a sense, I do have a schedule. The thing is, schedules are made to be broken. Even more so when you're retired. So don't call it a schedule. Call it a plan, or things that I think I might want to do. And don't get uptight if you don't get them done on that day, because there's always tomorrow. But having said that, time goes by very fast when you're retired. I can't believe I've been retired for 7 years. It doesn't seem that long ago. Although in some ways it seems like a million years ago that I was up in front of a class and teaching. So I don't know, it's kind of a weird dichotomy in here. If that's the right word, dichotomy, I guess. I'm starting to lose my English.
Actually, I didn't really plan anything when I retired.
Well, you never really plan anything.
No, well,
except
I didn't.
trips. But yeah, actually, though, if that helps, because you are going to move from a very structured environment to an environment that could still be structured, but it's your structure. So I guess you got to make that work.
I just like that I don't have to do all the negative things I had to do when I was at work.
And yeah, that's when sometimes when I think, well, I don't think anymore about that. In the first couple of years, though, I thought, did I make a mistake? I feel like a fish out of water here. And that's why I say it takes a couple of years to get used to that. I was just saying, Joey says, I forget what day it is, especially the date. 3 times I've gone to the grocery store, parked, then discovered I'm barefoot. Oh, brother, back to the house to put on those shoes. Ridiculous. Okay, Jody, I hate to tell you this, but you may have the early stages of dementia. Like that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Actually, that's true. If I didn't have an agenda, there are days when I have to think, and he does the same thing. What day is this? And I mean, that's the way it is for my mother every day.
I do sometimes get my days mixed up, but I usually, since I'm a computer a lot, I see what day it is. So.
But of course, that comes from our work backgrounds. Our work backgrounds were probably very scheduled, so we knew, like as a school teacher, on Wednesdays this has to be done, on Thursdays this has to be done, blah blah blah. Now it doesn't have to be done, so it's developing new routines, and that takes some time.
And things I forget about when I'm retired is I'll go out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I forget that the school buses are all out.
Oh yeah, we forget about that, or PD days, and suddenly all the kids are in the mall, like, and buried up to their elbows, you know, in the food court, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like we kind of forgot about when we went to Ottawa that it's the end of the school year, and that's when, well, he wouldn't have thought of that anyways, but oh yeah, grade 8 graduation trips, they all go to Ottawa. Yeah. What else is said here?
So Melly Art says our system's a bit different in the US or Canada. Of course, it's good to save, but we have health care and all this other stuff. Yeah, that's true. We have health care and stuff too, but
doesn't cover everything.
It doesn't cover everything.
Dental.
I mean, maybe your health care covers more, but there are others, and new governments come in and they change the laws sometimes. So, and
don't we know that?
And then we have, but we have other things. Like, I mean, I have to buy stuff for the house to fix up the deck, paint the deck, or something like that. I have to buy supplies and stuff like that. There's still expenditures that you have to do.
Hi, Nairi.
And if you want to travel, the government doesn't cover that.
Yeah.
The government doesn't pay for my trip to Australia, so.
Well, Jody's made a really good comment, which I think really sums up the philosophy one needs to have when being retired. I feel an overwhelming sense of feeling very grateful that my day is mine. I appreciate every single thing. And you know, the important thing there is that I take away from that is that my day is mine. And you want to know something? That sounds like a very simple thing to say,
Yeah.
but everybody else wants a piece of your day. You have to remember, you don't work for anybody anymore. You are your own boss. You control your time, your schedule. Don't let other people do it. And this brings me to another topic that came out of that seminar I took that the lady said to us. She said, okay, the first thing you're going to want to do when you retire is volunteer. Why do you want to volunteer? Because you haven't had the time before and you feel that you need to give back. And so now this is your opportunity because you have all this free time that you can give back. She said, don't do it. At least don't do it in the first 2 years of your retirement. You have to get a sense, she said, of the things we've been talking here. Your schedule, how your life is changing, how you're coping with those changes. And it doesn't happen overnight. You don't go into retirement mode the day after you retire. You don't. It takes at least 2 years. She was absolutely right. The other thing she said was, if you do that, most volunteering places want a time commitment from you. So, this thing about the day being yours is no longer yours. They want you to come in on certain days of the week or from certain hours on a day or whatever. They want you to do this, that, and the other thing. And basically, and I don't care what the where you're volunteering, they will treat you all the same way. You are volunteers, you are free labor, you get all the Joe jobs that the full-time staff that are being paid don't have A, time for, or B, don't want to do. So what did I do? I disregarded her advice and I started volunteering. I volunteered with the senior citizens and they had all kinds of plans for me. They wanted me to, first of all, they wanted me to teach a crafting class once a week in card making. I had about 3 old ladies show up with that. I had to supply all the materials. They didn't have any money, so my donation to them was all the supplies that went into that. That grew old really quickly because one, being a teacher, what do? I prepped for this. I set it up as a lesson plan. I had everything laid out. It was all organized and structured. And then you were supposed to have like 6 people in the class, 2 showed up. Or 1 shows up half an hour late. Or 1 has never had a pair of scissors in her hands ever. And so I've got to teach her scissor safety. So then they wanted me to teach a series of seminars to senior citizens about being secure online. Well, I'm a teacher. So what do? I create PowerPoint. I research this. I put it all together. I even bought a projector for this, you know, an LED for, you know, plugging into your computer and putting it up on the wall. I mean, my own expense for this, which is now gathering dust. It's been used about 3 times. And the whole bit to put these things together. Did I get a thank you? No. Did you get any kind of recognition for it? No, they just wanted to pile more on you. So I stopped that. So then I thought, well, what am I going to do next? Then I decided, and this wasn't voluntary, this was, I got a job. And I worked for 2 years at the scrapbooking store. Didn't hate it, but I didn't keep it up because, again, suddenly my time I can't schedule. I had to schedule around when I was going to be working. I didn't work a lot of hours, but I usually worked several weekends. I usually worked several days in a week, and I hated that. I didn't have any freedom. And for the amount of money that I was getting from doing that, basically I just bought more product. And so she'd hand me a paycheck. It was a joke, and I'd give it back to her for the stuff. Then I volunteered for the 4P flag. And again, I was to go around and give seminars to various community groups about what PFLAG was all about and that kind of stuff. Yeah, the branch of PFLAG we have out here is totally disorganized, totally unappreciative of volunteer help, and the more you do, the more they want. So I gave that one up. Then, you still think I would learn. I volunteered for the art gallery. Now you've heard about that, and we've talked about that before. And now, basically, same things have happened with that as the other ones, and so we're no longer really volunteers for that. Because everybody wants a piece of your time.
And not only that, like the art gallery doesn't, or some of them, these places do not seem to appreciate the fact that you've worked an entire lifetime at a particular type of job and you have a certain skill set. They don't care about that. If they need somebody to sweep the floors, you gotta sweep the floors. Which I don't really care, I'll do that. But, I mean, like you, the art gallery there that you were with, you have a big education degree and you taught kids for many years, but they don't seem to appreciate that. They don't seem to
Because
value that.
any organization looks at their volunteers as free labor. If you're okay with that, that's fine. Maybe you go into volunteering because you feel a personal obligation, because it's something that you reaped a benefit from earlier in your life and you want to give back to it. That's all fine. But just be aware that what you've done is you've taken your job and replaced it with a new job, one that you don't get paid for. If you're okay with that, if that fills your days, and I don't even like to use the term fill your days, because that sounds like, oh, I've got nothing to live for, so I got to fill it up or I'm going to die, kind of a thing. And that's not what retirement should be about, okay? Then go for it. But I strongly suggest that what that woman said in the seminar at the time that I poo-pooed, she was absolutely bang on the money, at least from my experience with that. So, and Jody just brings up something I did want to talk about too. She says, I try and make friends wherever I go. I'm not afraid to strike up a conversation with people I know the names of service people, etc. I'm able to now offer someone behind me in the grocery store line to go in front of me before I was in such a rush with blinders on.
I do the opposite. I'll stand behind somebody with one item and they'll offer me to go ahead and I'll say...
Well, that's because they think you're old and decrepit.
Yeah, and I'll say, well, no thanks, I'm in no rush.
Hi, Chris. But what I want to say about that was another thing on my list here is the social part of being retired. Okay, when you were working, you probably had a social connection or network within your job. You know, some people you may have socialized with outside of the job, or at least there were maybe social events, depending on what kind of business you worked in or what kind of profession you were in, where you came in contact with people. When you retire, you will lose all of that, okay? It's gone. Now, this is where Walter and I differ in retirement. I have absolutely no contact with the teachers that I was working with. Not because I hate them, not because I don't want to have contact with them, it's because my world has changed. They are still in their profession. Their world revolves around what they're doing in a classroom. If I was to get together with them at some social event, they would all lean towards teacher talk, and I feel out of the loop. I don't know these kids. I don't know what they're doing in education like I did before. I'm out of the loop. So, and as such, they kind of exclude you from the conversation. They're really not particularly that interested in what I'm doing now as retired. I mean, they may say, so what are you doing? Oh, I see you're going on a lot of trips. That must be nice, blah, 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 blah. And then the next teacher said, did you see Johnny last week at school? He was being this little, and then there it goes, out. Whereas he goes out for lunch.
Yeah, with
two different groups.
Well, with retirees, and then there's a group that I used to do stained glass with, we still see each other every once in a while and go out for dinner. And it's nice, we, in both groups, we don't really talk work or stained glass that much. We talk stained glass a little bit in stained glass. But with the work group, these are people I worked with. But see, the problem with the work group is we all did different things at work, right? I was in IT and did technology stuff, whereas some of the people in this group were managers and things like that. And we all did different things. But we always, when we were at work, we would talk about our families or kids or things, you know, what they call it, water cooler talk or whatever, you know, where you talk about your personal life, right? Well, when we get together, we've known each other for years and years and years, and we just talk about what's going on in our lives, and some of us have similar interests and stuff like that, and it's really nice to catch up with people again.
So I guess though the thing too is if you don't, okay, so you see, this is where Walter and I differ. He's got those ones. He goes out to lunch with them. I don't go. I sit home, suck on an old dry crust of bread, whatever, with my babushka on my head. No. But I have other social outlets too. And the fact like sewing classes, that's a social outlet. I've met people there, kind of a thing. I'm not a lady who lunches, although I'd like to be.
Where you lunch with me?
Well, I eat with you, but it's you. So, I mean, like, that's fine. But I really think if you're the kind of person, see, I've always been the kind of person, though, who is a bit of a loner in the fact that I never cultivated a lot of a social circle where, you know, we're all, you know, in contact with everything over, you know, oh my God, she just got a new ring. Did you see it? Oh my God, no, I just got pearls. Oh my God, sister, that's, you know, no. I don't have friends like that. In fact, I don't even want to talk about what friends I do have. But anyways, so you got to do things because it's very easy to get isolated socially. And I think that creates loneliness. You know, and I think about people who are on their own when they retire. That has to be probably the biggest killer because unless you've got a really tight group of friends that you work with for so many, many years and you've been more than just work buddies, you've been friends and the whole bit, you have nobody. You walk out there and, you know, there you are. 10 years down the road, they find you laying frozen dead in a chair eating out of a cat food
Well, I have
box.
to admit, a lot of these people that I go on the retirement lunch, I probably never really socialized with that much. I mean, I had a circle of people that I worked with, but we didn't really socialize outside of work. We socialized within work, like Amy and Lori and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to, especially Amy. Amy's one that she started the same week I did at the last work that I had, and so we've always sort of like talked a lot about stuff together.
Oh, why don't you just marry Amy then? Okay. But interesting comment Nairea's made here. I don't work Fridays anymore, and Friday is just for me. If I want to watch Netflix all day or spend time in my happy place, craft room, go shopping center, that's what I do. I love it. That's an important concept. It revolves around the whole subject of guilt and self-indulgence. Don't be afraid to self-indulge. You've worked a long time in your life, and if you were in a job where you had to constantly give to other people, it's your time. If you just, there are days when I don't feel like doing anything around here. I don't feel like sewing. I don't feel like working in the craft room. I just want to lay on the couch and watch a Netflix documentary on some stupid thing like Is the Earth Flat or whatever. And when I first did that, I felt really guilty. I'm thinking, I'm wasting my time here. This is mindless kind of stuff. No, it's not. Sometimes you need that. And if I want to pass out on the couch while I'm watching this, then I'll pass out on the couch. I'm not answering anybody about that. That's just how I feel that day, and that's what I want to do. Now, I think too much of that might not be a good thing, but occasionally, self-indulge. Why not? No one else is going to do it for you, so you might as well.
Okay, and then Nairi said, do you think it's important to have a variety of interests outside of work?
Yes.
At least one interest.
At least one, if not several. Yeah, and this is a problem in our society. People define themselves by the job that they do. And that's where their self-esteem comes from.
Like, I mean, though the interest that you have was, let me just cut in this thing.
Well, you're going to do it anyways,
the
aren't
interest
you?
that you have can't be work related, put that way.
No, it should not be anything.
Like, I mean, I was a programmer for many years and stuff like that. Well, if somebody joins a programming club, right, as part of their interest, it's related to work. I don't really think that's necessarily an interest outside of work, because a lot of people join those groups because it helps them with their daily jobs.
I teach the art journaling class, as you know, once a month. Now, I have thought many times that I should just stop that, because one, I have to prep for it. I like the group I've got. I've been doing it for 2.5 years. They're a great group of ladies to work with, and I always enjoy myself once I get there. But I have to prep for it, and I have to set up for it, and it's teaching again. Although we have sort of evolved away from that a little bit more. And in the fall, we're going to try something new. We're going to have guest teachers doing it within the group. So it takes the pressure off me, and they want to do that. So that's great. But the fact is, I'm doing something that I already used to do. It's still teaching. I highly suggest that you find interests that are outside of what you do day to day as a living. Cultivate something. My father did not have any hobbies. He lived for his work. I think that's what brought on his dementia, for one thing, or at least made it more aggressive than it should have been.
Yeah, because when he actually, they actually forced him out eventually, and basically he was at home. He didn't know what else to do.
And it was sad, and I think that's what killed him more than anything else. Was because of that, and I think that's what's going to kill my mother too, because all she does is sit in front of a television set in the nursing home all day long.
She has no other interest.
And she's losing it.
And she always says, well, I have no interest in this. I have no interest in that. Like, it's like...
Yeah.
It's like...
and we say no interest, mean no interest. She doesn't read. Nothing.
She won't, like, I mean, they tried to get her an iPad. She said, oh, I would like an iPad or something. So, but she didn't want to learn it.
No.
So, like, I mean, it's like, you gotta
put yourself out there a little bit. You know, yeah, it's scary because this goes maybe beyond what you're used to, but hey, what better time in your life than you can always say no afterwards, but don't say no before you try it, kind of a thing.
Sudicue says, I've started having conversations with people when I walk. And it says, Mitzi? What's Mitzi?
When I walk Mitzi, her dog.
Oh, yeah. Talking.
Boy, I know a hobby for Walter, basic literacy.
Okay, I can't talk.
Talking to people who are still working is depressing because they complain too much. Ah, good point. Yes, they do. They do. You know how to shut them up? Just turn around and go, well, I'm not anymore. Too bad for you, boo-hoo. Moving on. And then they hate you. Chris says, I guess I have retired. I lost most of my social connections. I live in a rural community. It's really hard to make connections. Yeah, I could see that being a problem when you live, in a rural area and the whole bit. But again, there are lots of groups. Go on Google, search for something you might, even if it's not something you do now, search for groups on something you might have an interest in or you thought you might have an interest in. I found the one advantage of when I joined the Senior Citizens, but I joined it too early in my life. That's when I was volunteering for the Senior Citizen Center. I took a genealogy. It wasn't really a course. It was more or less a lady who does genealogy and was telling us about different things and whatnot. But it was social. You met people, you talked to people, and it didn't always revolve around genealogy, but that was our common interest kind of a thing. But there were other things. The only thing that depressed me about the Senior Citizen Center was most of them were a lot older than me, and I really felt like I was in a retirement home, like a nursing home. So it kind of got out of that. In fact, when I let my membership lapse and I got a call from somebody about renewing it, and I said, to be honest, I have nothing against it. I just think, quite frankly, I'm too young for it at the moment. So maybe down the road I'll rejoin again, but right now it's not fulfilling a need that I feel I need to fulfill.
Yeah, and also, like, if there's, you say you're in a rural community, maybe there's something in your area. Like, I mean, even if you just get you out, you'll end up talking to other people.
Yeah, and I mean, that may not be easy for everybody, just to talk to perfect strangers, but I have found you can develop that skill, because I find it, you wouldn't believe it, as maybe what my personality that comes across on this video, or because I was a teacher, so I was used to talking to people every day and the whole bit. But I'm actually kind of a shy person. But I have learned that if you don't make a move and you wait for somebody else to make the move, that may never happen. So what's the worst thing that can happen? You have an awkward silence at one point. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, well, later on, she
I'm
said
alive.
that she retired, she started crafting, and that's how she's found some more people to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how. Like, I mean, I've taken a sewing class coming up this week. Actually, Tuesday I can't go because Tuesday's my sewing class.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So we'll have to do the iPhone thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was an aside.
So anyway, and actually part of that is that you're in there with another group of people, mostly women, but I mean another group of people that and you talk to each other.
Yeah. And even if they do talk all about their grandchildren and we
Yeah.
don't have any, at least it's something. You know, at least it's interesting. You pick up little tidbits along the way. And Andy says, I'm basically shy. It's easy to talk about my dog with other dog owners. Well, yeah, you see, there's a commonality with it as well. So, anyways, I think we've had a good discussion here about retirement and we've looked at it from our point of view. And I hope some of the things we've talked about shed some light for you if you're not retired but thinking about it. I guess the bottom line is, have I ever been happier than now? No. I am very happy that I'm retired. I like my life, what it is. Even with things with my mother and stuff like that, it's still a good life. I'm enjoying it. The thing is, it's going by way too quickly. That's the only thing.
I like being retired. I like not having that commitment to go to work every day, and I like not having. Now, part of my problem with work too is the last few years is that I'd have commitment where I'd have to stay up half the night because I had to do an install or something like that, or a half a week.
So how's that changed? You
Well,
still stay up half the night.
No, I do, but it's my own time. It's not. I'm not sitting there monitoring a computer to try and figure out whether it's posted or not.
And that's the one issue that very quickly I just want to touch on. When there's two of you, and one is retired and the other one isn't retired, there's an adjustment period for that one person who is retired. But then there's an adjustment for the other person because they're not retired. But then when he retired, and even though I'd been retired for 5 years, I had to go through a new adjustment because now he was home all the time. So for the first 5 years, I was used to a new routine, a different routine. He'd get up, go to work, come home at a certain time.
Well, actually,
I was on my own all day.
The last couple of years that I was working, or the last year or so that I was working, I worked a lot from home. So again,
Yeah. So that kind of eased me into it. But yeah, when you retired, there's one thing you have to think about. It doesn't just affect you; it affects the other person you're with as well, because it's going to affect their life, and their life's going to affect you too. So you have to get around it. It's all a series of adjustments. But I guess that's what keeps you fresh, right? You don't get caught in the same old groove. So, anyways, I think that's it for today. That's our time, and I think that was a really good discussion. I was going to go over some comments that people have made on the videos because this was a suggestion by somebody that we talk about that. And Sue from Australia sent me some suggestions for future topics. And I think they were ones that we've talked about already, so I'll take in that consideration. It was Jody who suggested that we take about 50 minutes to interact with folks who are leaving comments in the chat. We don't get a lot of comments in the chat that are, well, we get comments, and thank you for the nice things that people say, but really, do we need to discuss the nice things? Keep them coming, though. I'm not saying I don't like them. Tracy made a suggestion about MeWe, about switching over from Facebook, and we talked a little bit about that today. And Phyllis recommended Prime Video. She called it Season 1 of Banished. It's about Australia's penal colony. I did look it up. It's actually called Death and something. Now I can't remember. I kind of watched it. I didn't watch it all the way through. I have to be no reflection on this suggestion by Phyllis, but I found it kind of dry.
Well, actually, she said Banished. There's a possibility that our Netflix doesn't have that on it.
Oh, I never thought about that. That might be. Oh, so maybe it is a totally different show.
Because if it's an American Netflix, they have more content than we have in Canada.
That could be. Well, anyway, so that was all the comments this week on there. And, if you want to watch a interesting but weird thing on Netflix. Watch this series called Osmosis. And we've just started watching Tales of the City by Amistad Maupin. He is an American writer. He's a LGBTQ writer. His books have been are famous. It's a series about life in San Francisco, but it's fictional characters and the whole bit. Well, they've made it into a series, and we watched the first 2 episodes on Netflix the other night, and it's kind of intriguing.
Well,
So-
apparently it's a remake, I've discovered, from a series that was broadcast starting in 1998 by PBS, right? And it has the same players in it, like Laura Linney and Olivia Dukakis, right? And but in the 1998 version, they had to leave a lot of the content out because it was too
explicit, risque
for that time period.
probably. So now they've not so risque anymore. Nairi says we've been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel on Prime. Yeah, we started watching that, and I don't know why. We just stopped, and not for any particular reason, because it was pretty good. Should go back and revisit it. Andy says it's Bruno, about a young man who lives in the Bronx and his dog.
Mhm.
So what's it called, Andy? Did I miss something? Or is that the title of it, Bruno? But anyways, there's that. And what's coming up for us this week? On Thursday, we're taking the long arm class, finally. And we have been talking about the possibility of buying a long arm quilting machine. However, we're going to leave that on hold for a bit. Well, one, because of the expense and the size. But Walter's been doing some research. And at the quilt show, we did a little research too.
Well, actually, we were at the quilt show, and Janome came out with a new machine that's a smaller footprint quilt, long arm type thing, for a reasonable price. And at first, we got kind of excited at it because it was more reasonable. It's still expensive, but
it was considerably less expensive than what we had been looking at.
But we got thinking about it. We talked to a lady at a store, a sewing store, well, on our way back from Ottawa, and she says you don't want to get into that because she says you're going to, it's going to be a mess. You'll be very disillusioned and very unhappy with it.
And she gave us some really good reasons why with it all. And so we're taking this long arm course on Thursday, and the lady that's teaching it, she's a long arm dealer, the whole bit. And we're going to talk about her a little bit and figure this out a little bit more and not rush into anything, because it's a major expense and you don't want to have what they call long arm anxiety.
Long arm remorse.
Long arm remorse, because, you bought the wrong thing. And it was, Andy says, yeah, it's called Bruno. It's on Netflix. Well, look that one up, Andy. Anyways, that's it for this week. Thank you for the discussion and the things that you were contributing to this. That's great, and I hope we can carry on with this kind of back and forth. And next week's topic, don't know yet. Stay tuned. There's several we can pick from. People have suggested we talk more about travel from our point of view as gay men. There's discussion about, what was the other things that came up? Ageism. Ageism might be good. Not
Travel
to
might be
suggest
okay.
that you're all getting old. I'm probably making a noise on that microphone when I moved it.
Travel might be okay because we have had situations where you book a room with one bed.
Yeah, okay,
And-
but you're jumping now into that discussion, and
All right,
that's not
yeah.
what we're doing right now. Anyways, we'll figure out what the discussion is for next week. You'll probably find out about it in the teaser next Sunday for it all. So, okay, so bye everybody. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. Don't forget my vlog tomorrow when it comes on. And there may be a new idiot quilter this week as well. So,
Okay.
talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Who would that be?
What?
A new idiot quilt.
Yeah, I said a new topic.